Hello, everyone. So, as you can see, new format here. I'm with a special guest. So, do you want to introduce yourself to everyone?
Hey everyone, I'm Lucas MacArthur, guitarist of Solarus, and Zach reached out to me for an interview, and I was more than happy to oblige. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So, thank you for being willing to do this. It means a lot. Never thought I'd ever be doing something like this.
No
So,
problem.
yeah, this is an interview, and the way I've laid it out is I kind of want to start from the beginning and try and go chronologically through everything all the way to the end for as much as I know. So some things may be out of order, so I've just randomly kind of guessed where things will be. So first question, what got you into metal and how did you come across it?
Santa Claus, honestly. I
Um,
first metal album I ever got was from Santa. It was a Korn's "Take a Look in the Mirror" album, and I didn't even know metal was a thing. I was so young at the time, and when I listened to that album, I just knew that heavy music was where I was at. And then from there, it just evolved, just spiraled into the European power metal, symphonic metal scene, and then eventually, then I started discovering the immense talent that Ontario had to offer, and brought me to where I am today. It's a pretty Reader's Digest version of that answer. Yeah.
yeah. So who got you the album? Who bought it for you?
Well, it was my aunt at the time. She actually kind of wasn't. She was like the metalhead of the family, and for some reason she just saw it in me, not my five other brothers and sisters. She's like, no, I think Luke is the one that's going to be a metalhead one day. So she convinced my mom to give me an album with a parental advisory sticker on it. She's like, I don't know, and I'm glad. And to this day, I still thank my mom for letting that slide because she's very proud of where I've gone. So
So it's her who got you into it. So you have her to thank for that.
yeah.
Yeah. So next question, how did you start playing the guitar? What got you into it?
Yeah, I was never meant to play the guitar actually. My mom, when I was about 14, 15 years old, asked me if I wanted to play guitar, and I said honestly no. I think it'd be boring and didn't like it, the idea. And
Right.
then luckily for me, they saw that I was just being a fucking idiot, and and they decided that they would that they would get me my first guitar for my 16th birthday, and yeah, and I was kind of like, oh, this is a cool gift, just and then I just didn't put it down, and then I just started kind of teaching myself everything I could. Eventually, I started tutelage under a teacher in Wallaceburg, where I'm from, Wallaceburg, Ontario, and yeah, and then from there, I just pushed myself as hard as I could.
So you never originally wanted to actually play the guitar. You kind of
No,
forced
no,
into.
not really forced into it. My parents never forced me to play it, but they just got me like a cheap starter, and they just said, "Look, if you don't like it, you don't have to. But you're sitting up there listening to your heavy metal all the time. We just figure you might like it." And if I didn't take the guitar lessons, my brother was going to take them. So my brother still teases me to this day. He's like, maybe I would have been the guy in Solaris if I'd if things had gone differently. So it was really funny.
It's weird. You weren't really ever kind of into it, but for me, I really want to play the guitar, but I want to basically play like a legend. But because I can't be that good off the bat, I just give up. It's hard to
Yeah,
have
no,
this.
it it's really just I'm a tactile guy. I'm a tactile learner. So once I get my hands on something, that's kind of when I really put my hands in the dirt and start getting to work. So yeah, I'm really glad that they called my bullshit on that one.
I'm glad too. You're a phenomenal guitarist, as well as starting at the age of 16. That's pretty incredible that you're so good and started
Oh,
that low.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. So you've kind of answered this next question, but what type of practice and training have you had to kind of get to as good as you are today?
Well, I mean, my regiments were always just like I took lessons from a awesome guitar guru in Wallaceburg, Ontario, named Bill Morrow. He was awesome, and he was forever in my eyes my mentor, and just one of those old school like rock and blues guys that just taught me all the essentials, and but then indulged in my metal tastes, and I loved working with him. And then when I moved away from home, to go to school and whatnot, I just kept the self practice up. I just basically most of it is self taught. Most of it's self taught theory and self taught research. I bought a whole bunch of books on all my mode scales, compatibility of chords and progressions and all that, and just by listening, just kind of by hearing it and learning other songs and learning how what makes music tick. So mostly for the majority of my music career, it's been self taught.
Incredible. As I said, how good you are now, it's just incredible that. So, next question, how did the idea of reunion come to be?
Yeah. Okay. So this is kind of the topics that really sparked this interview, and that we were talking about how we wanted to get the story straight, and the story of reunion. You know, when I was very young, I'd say 8, 9, 10, somewhere in that range. It's hard to remember off the top of my head. I don't want to do the math for the sake of making this interview like more tedious than it needs to be. I want to keep it fun, but when I was that young, my that was when my aunt had passed away, and she took her own life and
I'm
left
sorry.
my. No, yeah, no, it was a devastating blow to the family. It was obviously very, very hard to deal with, and I was quite young at the time, so I didn't quite fully comprehend what was going on. But I remember as a kid seeing the pain, like, I had relatives die when I was younger, and it's just like, relative died and then life moved on, but it was different with her because of the nature. Like, she was younger than I am now when she did it. She was, I think, 28 years old. And my mom was best friends with her, and she had 4 other siblings in addition to my mom. And when she did that, it was such a shock. And my uncle came home allegedly, and just this is like all through stories I've been told by my family, and found her and called the ambulance, which is why you get that ambulance at the beginning of the album. And by the time they got there, it was just too late. They couldn't do anything, and he was left kind of to suffer through his final year or so, when he was struggling with cancer. And he always listened to oh god, what was the song? I don't even remember who does it, which is sad. It's a very popular song, that oh where could my baby be? You know that one? It's
No.
all about kind of like not being able to wait to see her in heaven. I remember as a kid he listened to that song all the time, and then when he was ready to pass away, he was so just, I don't know. I remember him seeming just okay with it. Maybe it was just because he was a stoic dude, but um so yeah, that was like my biggest childhood moment, where like everything that was deeply impactful. And I always had a curiosity about it. I always um asked my family members about it, my grandmother, despite the immense pain it would cause talking about it, but I wanted to know about it. And it never occurred to me to kind of turn it into a concept for an album. And then this brings kind of Borealis into the mix, where when I started doing the reunion album, he when I started kind of like listening to Purgatory, I'm like, man, this is like, it's cool that they can do that concept. They can do that. You can do a concept album without it being this big Dream Theater-esque kind of like, oh, all the songs have to meld together and stuff. And I was kind of a newbie at writing albums at the time. And so I just it didn't even cross my mind. I was like, you can do that? And he's like, and Sean's like, you can do anything. Like, do whatever you want. It's your album. And I was like, okay. And then, from there, I just did the idea just started swirling in my head. And, there was an elephant in the room. It's like, is this too similar to what they've done? But Sean was so nice to have helped me kind of push that. And it was kind of a passion project. So it wasn't really that big of a deal. And then so I just kind of went ahead with that idea, and he was very supportive of it, which was really, really flattering, because those guys are my I'm talking about Sean from Borealis, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that. For people who don't know, it's the drummer of Borealis, and he's
Yeah, I
my
wasn't going to
producer.
mention that. I knew it, but obviously people may not know it. So thanks for clearing
Yeah,
that. Because
yeah. So yeah, it's very he was very supportive and awesome in helping me bring that album to life, and didn't impede that process at all. And I always knew that I was going to have to deal with the backlash of using the producer of Purgatory, the person who played on Purgatory, and like the similarities between the album. And, and at the time Solaris wasn't supposed to be a band. It was just a one album off thing. I just wanted to do that.
Mm.
And it immensely brought a lot of closure to my family. So that was good. I don't know if that was a pretty long-winded explanation. I'm sure you have other questions regarding the album, so I'll just kind of leave it at that for now.
Yeah, you kind of stepped into a few things, but
sorry, I tend to do that. Like,
though, like I really was enjoying all of that, so I didn't want to just stop you. But where did that get to? So the idea came around the age of 6 to 8, and then you picked up the guitar at the age of 16. So when did the lyrics and just mapping out the songs actually start for Reunion? Seeing that you kind of had the idea of it at 6.
Yeah, like I said, it wasn't really like an idea per se. Like, when you're a kid, you're not thinking, I'm going to make an album about this one day. Like, that's not really necessarily the case. It was just something that, like, at the time I was talking to especially my grandma. Like, there was a couple, like, I'm very close to my grandmother, and there was multiple nights where I'd be visiting home and crashing at her place, and her and I would just stay up and talk about this stuff and life, and the impact that her death had on us and everything, and till like 2 or 3 in the morning. Like, we had really long in-depth conversations, and it was around the time that I had been like, hey, I'm gonna do an album, and then I was talking to her about that idea one night, and this was after Reunion. We'd already started putting down the instrumentals, so we'd already started production on it, and it wasn't until after the instrumentals started where I started formulating the lyrical ideas surrounding it. And I was just like, and I basically asked my grandma, I was like, would you be comfortable if like I wrote the album and kind of like put a positive spin on it at the end, so that we can kind of like
personal.
Yeah, it's very personal, and I wanted to ask what she thought, and she was very touched and moved by that, and now she's one of our biggest fans. I think she listens to Reunion every day, and she's like, and she really loves it, and
grandma metal. That's
same with my mother and my my siblings and whatnot. So
the album actually started when you went to record it. So
so it was just a lot of instrumental ideas I had that I knew I wanted to make an album. Like, that's just what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something musical. And what's more was I was presented with the opportunity to make an album with Borealis, and like that kind of, there's a lot to unpack here because of the history I have with them. But that was an opportunity I did not want to pass up, because that's something I'd wanted for, at that point, about 7 years. I've been working towards trying to make music with them, and it never panned out. So that was a perfect opportunity to do that. And it just so happened that story was kind of aligning with what was going on in my life at that time. It was a deep subject of interest. And then on top of that, they taught me, like, just through listening to their music, they taught me that you didn't have to make this grandiose, like, epic, 2-part album with, like bridge tracks and stuff like that, just like that fancy, concept album stuff. You didn't have to do that to make a story out of an album. So then I just kind of was like, you know what? And I asked Sean about it. I was like, this is what I'm thinking of doing. And he was really, really accommodative of that. So I was very grateful. And then, so I don't want to get too much into it yet, because I'm sure you have a question about that, about like my history with Borealis, so we can kind of clear up where all that starts to intertangle. But yeah, so.
Yeah. So seeing that you've been talking about Borealis, that was the next question. How did you meet Borealis? How did you actually come to meet them?
Yeah, so I way back in the day bought tickets to go see a little band from Finland called Sonata Arctica. No, they're quite popular, and they were coming to London, Ontario. It was massive blizzard. Very few people ended up showing up to the show, but I made it out with my my girlfriend at the time, and this little band called Borealis was opening for them. I'd never heard them before, and they took the stage. And I remember like the first song they played was like, it was a newer song. I think it was Where We Started, actually. It was a long, and I remember being like, holy shit, like this band is like what the metal band I've been looking for, like that. And then I was shocked when they said we're Borealis from Orangeville, Ontario. I'm like, Jesus, these guys are like 2 hours away. That's crazy. So I talked to a few of them after the show, and this was back in like just 10 years ago now. So this was a long time ago, and I just became an avid supporter of them because I just thought what they were doing was so cool. And then, this is, I don't know, like this kind of stuff can maybe bury me in the long run, but I don't think they'd have a problem with me like kind of talking about the history. But then when they were auditioning guitar players, because Ken, their current guitar player, actually, alongside with Matt, actually had to step away from the band. I'm not sure why. I think it was just life circumstances and whatnot. And they started auditioning guitar players, and I threw my hat in the ring. And I didn't think, at the time, I didn't think I was up to snuff for the job, but I tried anyway. And I, at the very least, I didn't make it in, but developed a very awesome relationship with them along the way. And so yeah, that's where that started. And it was really a matter of me just wanting to be a part of what they were doing, because like I love the music they write, and I absolutely loved the way that they phrased things, and the way that they took metal in a direction that I didn't know was possible. And so that admittedly started like this deep hunger to want to like write with them one day. So 6-7 years passed by where I'm kind of like doing my own thing, just kind of writing a few random riffs and tunes with like a drummer from the area where I live in Ontario, and then I end up talking to Sean at a show, and he's like, yeah, I'm actually producing albums now, so if you want, we can like make that happen. And he was very generous with me, because he said, you've supported the shit out of us financially and through social media over the last few years, like, he'd be more than happy to help you out. And I was like, cool. And so that was like that dream coming to fruition, because these guys were like my heroes at the time. So that was awesome. And I actually just happened to have met Sarah that exact same night. So it was this really crazy coincidence that we all met at this one show. It was a Nightwish show, actually, here in London, Ontario. So it was a pretty crazy serendipitous moment.
Again, you've answered a fair few questions in that. So
that's how it usually goes.
Yeah. So the next one was, how did Reunion come about, and how did it start? So I'm guessing that was basically Sean came to you and offered you with the idea of making the album.
Yeah, it was basically it was kind of like he generally reached out to people that he knew. I think it was over Facebook or whatever. I can't remember exactly, but it was a general reach out. And then he said, if you like are putting an album together, reach out to me. So I did. So I messaged him. I said, hey man, I'm not even sure if I'm ready for this. Like, I don't have all the pieces in place. All I got is a guitar, like my plucky attitude and my guitar playing, and some kind of like drums to go with it, but we don't have like a keyboardist and stuff. And I was still approaching it from the perspective of, I need a band before I can go in a studio. And he said, man, that's bullshit. You don't need that shit. It's like, let's just get the ball rolling, and the rest of it will, like, he kind of taught me, it's like, just start a project you want to start, and the rest of the pieces just will fall into place, and yeah, he was right. Like, that project kind of developed a gravitational pull, and then it pulled in Sarah, and then eventually it kind of pulled in my other permanent members. And so, yeah, so I reached out to him and asked him if he'd be interested in helping me out with that. But it was a general like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing right now. He said, well, I've done this a couple times, so I can help you out. So that's kind of how that happened. Yeah.
So what was the recording process like? So I guess it just started with you just making out all the instrumentals with the guitar, and then eventually you had to get the other members in after you did that?
So yeah, so controversially, because we live in a pretty modern technological time, it was basically just me. Um, and and then my drummer at the time, Jacob Burton, and phenomenal drummer, and he was such a awesome part of that pie that we called Reunion. And then so the recording sessions were they were fun. They were nice, just laid back road trips where we had once we knew that we were kind of going to do this. I'd spent like the next 3-4 months, I'd say, really really working hard at finalizing some demos. And then I brought them to Sean, and we sat down and started recording. And then there were pieces of songs here and there that he'd be like, this would sound really cool if you have the right idea, but if you did something like this. And it was at like on a very very small scale. Like he's a great producer in the sense that he really embraces the collaborative part of being a producer, and which is another reason why that album came out sounding like it did, because he's such an integral part of borealis, right? And so like that's another reason why that kind of came out. And like I said, this album Reunion was kind of a one-off that was kind of meant to scratch that itch that he knew that I had to work with them. And then Matt offered to offer his vocals up for a few of the tracks too, and I wasn't going to pass that up. I mean, that was a dream come true. That album was just turning into this dream come true for me, which is I just want to write music with these guys. And so I primarily wrote all the songs. Like I came with a fully fleshed out like demo scratch track of the entire album, and then I had like rough lyrics and like rough vocal takes kind of sitting there ready to go. And then we kind of just finessed it with the rest as we went. And it was a very fun process. There was zero hiccups along the way. It was just super fun. Not a single hardship. Just a lot of pizza and a lot of hours. That's basically the way it went.
So how did it feel making the album Reunion?
Oh, it was like a huge, like I said, it was a big itch that finally got scratched over like 7 years. I was just like, I was ecstatic to, at that point, I had kind of, like all those feelings that I'd missed out on a musical opportunity when I didn't make the cut when I was auditioning for them. It was kind of a huge weight off my chest. And then it was even more rewarding when I saw that people were really shocked about this. They're like, oh, there's this random band from Ontario. Like, where the hell were these guys? Never played a show. And that was really uplifting too, seeing like all the positive reception it got. So it was an amazing feeling. And I think, and then once Sarah joined on board, and she, just as an aside, because I want to make sure, like, she comes into the story right about now. She wasn't really, I'd met her like before we started doing the album, and all I knew, I didn't even know it was her that was on the Borealis albums, and she's dating Sean. So it just came up in conversation after. I'm like, oh shit, that was you. That was really cool. And like, and then months and months and months passed, and then we started getting to the final stages of doing this album Reunion. And it was actually, me, I was kind of like, oh, maybe like bring Sarah on for like a part or something like that and see if that would work. And it was actually Sean that approached Sarah and was like, hey, like, there's this really cool project I think that you should really like throw yourself at. And like, because she's a phenomenal singer, and she's had a history of singing, and she's never really had a platform to kind of really showcase what she can do. And Reunion was kind of tough for her because like you and I have had conversations about this, is she had to jump in on Reunion and kind of just fill a void, which was really hard for her to do. Like it wasn't fair for me to be like, hey, here's a full-length album, can you write melodies to this whole thing in a month? That's ridiculous. So I wrote like most of the melodic and lyrical content in that album, and then she would kind of diverge if she needed to. But So yeah, so I wanted to make the record clear on that. If there's any melodic problems with Reunion, I'm the one to blame.
Okay.
Not Sarah. She did a phenomenal job with what she was given, and which is, and I've listened to your review of Darkest Days, and I was very flattered, and that's why I was very happy to hear that people were seeing that, because Darkest Days was the one where her and I sat down and said, you take the vocal reins 100% on this one, and it paid off. So
Yeah, you can definitely hear that.
yeah.
So, what was the hardest part of making Reunion? Was there any part that was really hard to do?
No, it went really smoothly. It's kind of
Really?
scary that how smoothly it went, to be honest with you. It was just
Yeah, it's a bit weird.
yeah, that happens when, you have someone who's been sitting on a whole bunch of musical content, you know, like I'd say about 50% of like the riffs and stuff from Reunion were written years before. Um, just on my own time and just on my own like dollar, and it just kind of got pieced together in Reunion. And yeah, so it was really really cool to see that go the way it did, which was smoothly. And that helped Sean out a lot, because that was his first full-length studio album that wasn't Borealis that he did. And he was really, he said that too. He's like, no, this is an album I can be proud of, to say this is like my first hired effort, like for his portfolio. So yeah, he's done an amazing job on that. It was really, yeah, it went way too smoothly. And as a result, I think that's what really made everyone want to jump on board, because Sarah was 100% on board after that, because she was just like, well, this works really well, why would we not do this? So
Yeah, from the sound of it, Sean was probably what made it all easy, because he's worked on so many albums, so he's kind of used to it.
yep.
He's the producer. You have a friendship with him, so there's a connection there. He knew Sarah, so we could bring everyone in quite easily.
Yeah.
So I guess he kind of made it
Yeah.
so easy for you.
So
Yeah.
if I may interject for a moment, just because I know this was kind of like a point of like, I know this is kind of like an itch that needed to be scratched in the course of this interview. It's just like what is actually like the backbone of your relationship between them? And like, it's obvious, like the similarities and everything. I need to just on public record just say that, like, I've worked really hard on this album, but it wouldn't have been able to actually become a listenable effort if it weren't for someone who was the glue to pull together, which is what the role of the producer is supposed to be. And Sean was the best producer I could have asked for. Like, I owe the world to him for doing what I think metal musicians should do in their local community, which is establish yourself and then build other people up, bring in another generation of music, and I can't wait till the day where I start being able to do that. But yeah, he's phenomenal. He was a really like this social network glue that really kind of brought everything together and brought this lowly pissant of a guitarist that from from out of the unknown into the production scene. So
Yeah. So next question. How did you approach doing the solos on Reunion?
I don't really have a great answer for that, because I just don't really remember. Lead guitar playing is kind of my niche. I kind of despise writing riffs, like for rhythms and stuff. Like I don't find it flows as naturally out of me. Like, there's a lot of riffs off Darkest Days that I had to kind of plug away for days and chip the fat away and just be like, I don't know if this is gonna work. But leads are something different. I don't know what it is. I think I naturally gravitate towards playing leads. I like phrasing things and voicing things melodically, and so I think it was just a matter of me just putting stuff on loop and just jamming around for like half hour to an hour and coming up with a bunch of great ideas, and then just kind of seeing what happens. The solos are kind of my favorite part, and they come the most naturally. So I wouldn't say there's like a process to them as much as just, okay, let's write a solo today and see what happens. Like, so yeah, I don't know if that's a good enough answer for you.
That's fine. What equipment did you use for that album?
So we used Sean Studio, and I believe in that one we were using Axe effects, and then we direct input into a Framus Cobra head, which I don't think they make anymore. It's the same. Believe it was the same head Killswitch and Gage used for a little bit. And then whatever Sean was using on his end software wise, I'm kind of a noob when it comes to that stuff, which is why I hired him. But yeah, all of his stuff, like that as far as guitar equipment goes, like that's what we used. We used a lot of Axe effects, amp modeling, preamps, and then the Framus Cobra was like the main weapon of choice in the making of that album, and he happened to have one in his studio, and we were like, well, let's use it, that'd be awesome. So yeah, I don't really. And then I used my trusty Ibanez baritone RG series that I have, which I used to record Darkest Days, and wasn't my guitar at the time, but it was actually Sean's studio guitar. And he was like, this thing sounds massive if you want to use it. And I liked it. So I was like, yeah, let's use it and we'll record with it. And then after the album was done, he was looking to sell it. And I was like, hey man, I'll buy it off you. And it's become my the love of my life over the last couple of years. So I was very, very fortunate. Yeah.
Well, that answers why you used the Ibanez. So
Yeah. I love how it sounded.
Yeah, Ibanez are quite versatile guitar. So next question: the Shadows lifted and back from where we started. Why do they sound similar?
Oh man, that is just okay. No, I don't know. I honestly, like, I've had those riffs. I had those licks and riffs written, and the reason. So I mentioned to you that I had actually kind of like previewed that song, and it was like mostly done in entirety. It was mostly just kind of movements. Like when I auditioned for them, I pitched it because I was like, this is kind of freaky. Like I write very similarly to you guys in the sense that like the song structure will have like guitar lead over a rhythm, and then it'll have like a big breathy part, and then it'll have like an acoustic part. And and they'd already written Where We Started at the time, and I'd only heard it when they played it live, and that was freaking years and years and years prior. And it was just, I don't know, like it was one of those things where I think most of it, I think it didn't sound nearly as similar as to when we actually got the production going on it. Oh. And I think I think the big variable in Reunion is the fact that I hired him as a producer, and at that point the only album he'd had under his belt was his own. And so it was very natural how we were going to basically use a lot of the same tricks and stuff. And I'm pretty sure he used the same like orchestral libraries and whatnot. So I don't know, like I think that's a big reason why they can sound similar. And it's funny because like no one had ever said that until you mentioned it. And I was kind of shocked because
yeah, I mentioned it.
No, it's okay. I was because I looked at it, I'm like, well, I can see what he's saying. But I hadn't heard that because, like it's like a 6.5 minute song or something like that. And it's got like this really elongated solo, and then it's got like all these random gallopy parts in the middle that just don't make sense. It's only got like 2 choruses, and like it's weird. But when you said that stuff, I was like, I can definitely see where he's coming from. And I just hadn't heard someone made the comparison before, and it kind of made me put it under the microscope and be like, wow, son of a bitch. And I could tell you like 2 or 3 other songs that song was massively influenced by, but none of them was Where We Started. I'm afraid to actually tell you what the songs are because you'll go listen to it and be like, hey. But yeah, no, none of them were Borealis on that track. So that was a really that was a good pickup on your ear. I was like, holy hell.
I was curious with one of your previous comments you've just done. When you first heard Borealis, you said that was the first song you heard, and then you thought, wow, that's really special.
I believe that was the first. Yeah.
Yeah, so from that, I thought maybe you used that because it was paying tribute to you getting into them. So I thought maybe that's why you did it
Not at all.
unconsciously.
Not at all. This was a coincidence, I think, and and at this point, I'm gonna be full disclosure. Like, there are plenty of moments in reunion that we could pick out, and I would be very amiss to be like, oh, like that had nothing to do with, like, Borealis had a big influence on me. They're musically one of my favorite groups in the whole world. So I'm not gonna try to pretend like I did not learn a lot of my songwriting from them. At the same time, so when I can say that, I can say with confidence that Shadows Lifted was completely just one of those, like, it was just more so an example of how similarly we write. And yeah, and even like there's been recording sessions where even Sean said, like, man, you were just like he's like, you even the same attitude, same mannerisms, and same habits, bad habits and good habits on the guitar. He said, you're just like freaking Matt. It's like recording
Yeah,
Matt from Boreal. I mean, and I don't pretend to hold a candle to that guy. Matt is a phenomenal guitar player and a phenomenal writer, and so anyway, so yeah, the Shadows Lifted thing was really funny. I'm glad you brought it up, and I'm more than happy to discuss it. But I assure you that if there was any rip-offery going on in that song, it had nothing to do with Borealis. Actually, it was a conglomeration of a few other musical influences I had at the time in university when I wrote the song. And yeah, and like I said, I'll kind of refrain from mentioning them now just to avoid the scrutiny, but
right.
and save skin on my back.
Okay, so next question. The name Solaris, where did that come from?
I don't have a good story for that. I don't really know. It was just the name started with, like, way back. Like, so much of these ideas started way, like, years and years before Reunion was even a thing. The band name used to be, or the band name idea used to be, like, frick, I don't even remember, but it started with an S and ended with an R. So you kind of get, like, and if you look at, like, the Solaris logo, like the last digit kind of looks like an R. And anyway, I just thought it looked cool, and I can't remember who helped me design it when I was way back in the day. It was just like a random hangout I had with, like a kind of temporary friend at university. But then I don't know. And then just when the album started coming to fruition, we're like, we should probably name this thing something, like. And I remember we were still, even, like, I was driving back with the drummer at the time from, like, one of our last recording sessions, and be like, well, what about this? What about that? What about this? And I don't know. Like, I think it was just Solarus was what was there when the clock ran out, and that was it. So it just kind of became the sticker.
Okay.
Yeah. Kind of anticlimactic answer to your question, but
How was the album cover made?
I dabble in graphic design, so, like, I was kind of designing most of this stuff at the time,
Oh,
and just playing with ideas. And I don't know if you knew that. So yeah, I actually designed the artwork, and there are things I wasn't happy about the first one, but it worked for what it was meant to be. And then I designed the Darkest Days one too. So yeah, that's it. I didn't hire anyone for that. The Reunion was like a do-it-yourself darling. It was, from beginning to end, it was an independent release. So
well, the album covers look pretty cool. So the fact that you did it yourself, that's pretty cool.
thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So some people probably know the outline of the story of Reunion, but how does the whole story actually go, track by track?
Okay, well, the tracks are more so representations of mental mindsets. Largely, like, so, like, One Final Moment was kind of literally just the one final moment, which is the start of the tragedy, which is kind of the perspective of someone who's like, oh my God, the person I love is in front of me and dead. and like I found her dead, and like that was awful, and which I guess can be confusing to people because it's sang with a female vocalist, so it kind of comes from the perspective of people naturally want to gravitate towards the perspective of a woman, but it was kind of written from the perspective that my uncle was like, trying to imagine what was going through his head at that moment. Shattered Skies is just a funeral scene. And that was really awesome when Matt joined on board. I actually sent him a few of the tracks that I had in mind for doing guest vocal spots on. And he messaged me. He's like, "Oh man, I really like Shattered Skies. Like, what part would I be singing in?" And I said, "Well, he's like, I hope you don't mind, but I kind of want you to sing in like the really acousticy part." And he's like, "Oh man, I'm so excited. That was the part I liked the most." And so yeah, like the lyrics are pretty on the nose on that one. Like, I buried you today, an unprepared goodbye. Like it's basically just like the frantic emotions that you go through on the burial day. It's never at a time where you're ready for it. It's only ever a few days afterward. And so that Shattered Skies was basically just like the funeral. My Eternity was kind of just like a general song about anger, resentment, and just being mad that you're left kind of living in a world by yourself, due to this tragedy that just doesn't seem fair. Prayer for the Fallen is more of like a bargaining song where it's just kind of like this internal bargain that you want to make in the grieving process of like, if I could just find a way to like get rid of this pain, like what would I have to do? And that then the most cliched, admittedly the most cliched kind of story element of that is like suicide. So it's just like, what do I have to do to kind of like end this? Ethereal Tears is a dream he had. That's actually just a dream scene and that's actually the album cover, which is the bridge in the sky. And it's all about them kind of meeting halfway in between worlds, I guess is the best way to say it. It's like halfway between heaven and earth, if you will, afterlife and the, material plane, whatever you want to call them. And that was basically them just having a conversation, and that's where that monologue came in. And that's not Sarah, by the way. I just wanted to point that out. That was a friend of mine, a guitar student of mine at the time, actually, named Kathy McKee. She lives in London here, and it was just a random little thing. I said, "Hey, like, would you want to be a part of an album?" And she was really excited about it. And so we drove down to Orangeville and recorded, and it was a really fun session. She actually recorded her vocals with Matt. And so it was one of those moments where she had bitten off a lot of awesome experience there, where she had a good time kind of being like, "Oh, this is how music's made," and watching Matt scream into a microphone. it was quite an experience. And yeah, so Ethereal Tears is kind of just this dream he has where, like, amidst all this anger and frustration and like, destructive mindset, and she kind of does this whole like, let it go, man. Like in a sentence, she's being like, let it go, learn to live with it, get over it. We'll reunite one day. Just it's not going to be on your terms. so that was kind of like the whole point of the album, is just learning how to live with loss without pushing your terms on it. Like, life has kind of its way of doing things. And Shadows Lifted is just kind of like a regretful song about like, regretting the mindset, regretting all the negativity that you put out into the world to to deal with it. Like, I think we've all had those moments in life where we're, in retrospect, we had like a very painful situation where we just, we regret the way we dealt with it. And so that's kind of what that song's all about, which is like Shadows Lifted. Surrender the Universe is just, I think that's the next one. I think Surrender the Universe is the 7th track. Yes. I always get Surrender the Universe and Unto the Angels mixed up. But Surrender the Universe, the ballad, that one was that was just like a nice little reprieve where it was just more like a love song than anything. Celebrating the memories that you've had with someone, generally speaking. And then Unto the Angels is a song literally about passing away in old age. It's literally just a song about dying, like breathing your last breath and being very content with everything you've learned in life and everything that has brought you to this point. And then Reunion obviously is just, two people meeting in heaven. That's just like kind of that. So that's kind of like a general summation of what each song is. So, in there tells a story, but I wanted to keep it more like based on like the feelings and kind of like the psychological state. Like I didn't want to make it like I went here and then I went there and so many years have passed and blah blah blah. Like I didn't want to make it a narrative as much as I wanted to just kind of keep it general. Okay, so that was a lot. It was a bit of a ramble, but I hope that clears up a lot of confusion surrounding it.
No, I wanted to know, so that was good. So when the album was done, how did it feel being done with it, and what did you do to celebrate?
I got wasted. I just got really. I had a great. I had had a great time. It actually released. I got the albums like on, I think it was December like 22nd or 23rd or something. So it was right before Christmas. So that was amazing. When I went down to visit family, I brought them down. And so sorry, everyone, my family got early access to the album, but whatever. And then it released on the new year. So that was a celebration in of itself. My goal was to release it before the end of the new year, and I missed the deadline by one day. So that was kind of a funny moment, but it worked out because we kind of got lumped in with like the new 2017 releases of the year, and that helped us kind of garner a little bit of attention. So I just went home with my family, and we listened to it. We just put it on while we were all partying at Christmas, and I listened to it with a few of my brothers and I don't remember if my mom was there at the time, but yeah, that was it. We just partied.
All right. So when the albums came out to fans and critics and everything, how was the response for you?
Very positive. I was blown away at how many people liked it. And the elephant in the room that me and Sean and Sarah had actually talked about was get ready for like here's a female borealis. Like it, and that was a big portion of the response too, which we didn't mind because it was just a once off thing and at the time, and we were just like, oh, whatever. It was a fun album, and this is a really, we didn't hide the fact that we collaborated heavily with Borealis on that album. We did not hide that at all. Matt's part of the tracks and everything, and so that was a big part of the critical reception. Was that they kind of put it on their Facebook page too, so they were helping promote it. Sean wanted to promote it because obviously it was his first effort at producing an album.
Yeah.
And he was really proud of how it turned out, so he wanted to put it out there as well. And so a lot of people who knew them kind of got directed towards us, which again, we can't thank them enough for doing that for us. And but yeah, despite that, and despite those similarities and the familiarities, people really liked it. They, for whatever reason, felt like there was something different enough to it that people were really enjoying it. And I have friends who I even friends here in London, my friends are the biggest part, because a lot of my friends are, a lot of friends will buy your album, they'll support you and stuff, but then they'll just kind of sit it on a shelf. But it's crazy. Like, when we played our first show in November, like how many of my friends showed up and were singing every tune word for word. I was just like, Jesus, they actually listen to this shit. So it was very cool. I couldn't have asked for a more positive reception of the first album.
So you weren't expecting it to be well received then, or something?
Well, I didn't expect it to be anything. I just put it out there, right? Like it was pretty quiet. I just kind of made a few random little videos on my YouTube channel, just being like, "Here's the journey to making this album. This is exciting." And so when I released it, and I found that there were people like that were, just random ass reviewers all over the place, and people from the States, people from Brazil, like people chiming in and messaging me, being like, "Where can I get a copy of this album?" I was like, "Holy shit, this is like, where the hell did this come from?" So it didn't like catch a huge wildfire or anything like that, but it was just it reached further than I thought it had any business reaching.
Mm.
Yeah. So yeah, it was because of that positive reception that that Sarah and I, like, I went down to, I have another project I'm working on, which will be kind of more publicly announced later. But I'm doing another album with a different singer with, like, a different kind of vibe. Um, and we went down to talk about that, and Sarah was obviously there. And while we were there, her and I were like, she was like, "Do you want to like do this? Like, not just like a passion project. Do you want to like make a band out of this?" And I was like, "Yes." So then from there, her and I just started seeking out permanent members. Unfortunately, the drummer we had for Reunion wasn't willing to stay on, and we miss him dearly, but we're not going to twist someone's arm to stay if they don't want to. And so then we started looking for permanent members. And that was that. So the positive reception was essential to getting that moving, because that lit a fire under us to be like, whoa, like, maybe there's something here. And more so, we were determined to like kind of branch and start doing our own thing too, which is what Darkest Days was meant to be, was this attempt to um, kind of forge a new path and kind of create a new, like at the very least, start discovering a new sound that was kind of uniquely ours. And I think we started with that, and I think we got a bit to go, but I definitely, see the direction it's going, and I'm excited about it. So just to wrap that back to the question, the positive feedback is kind of what ignited the band aspect. So yeah, I was very surprised and very grateful for it.
So how did Darkest Days come about? How did that start?
Darkest Days was just a standard metal album, in the sense that we just said, "Hey, do we want to do another album?" And Sarah was like, "Absolutely." And she had songs that she brought to the table that she'd written, some of which were like pretty done, barring like guitar leads and stuff, and then others that were kind of just in the skeletal phases. And I had a couple tunes that I was working on, just that I just wanted to put down, and we kind of put that together, and we had the brainstorm of it. We didn't really have any concept or anything of this album. It was just, we just wanted to focus on making like a cool sounding metal album, and our only goal was, we need to outdo Reunion. Like, we need to kind of like make this sound different from Reunion. That was our goal, because a lot of the criticisms I heard in your reviews, which, by the way, I just need to say I'm very grateful for. We're very, very ecstatic that there are people out there that are willing to talk about our music for an hour. That's success to us. And we're all incredibly open to that kind of stuff, and it's because of that, Darkest Days turned out the way it did, because we listened to people kind of saying that stuff. And so we started kind of writing it out, and it all started with, like I said, a conversation I had with Sean, and he was really pushing us to do it. He was in the area, and he was dropping off the guitar I bought off of him, and we had a beer, just talking about it. And he said, "Hey, like, I think you and Sarah should consider doing this. Like, this, you guys got like something cool, like something, there's something there. It's worth exploring." And she's a great singer, and it's a miracle she hasn't been snagged up by anyone. Like, she's just living a quiet farm life. And and so I was like, "Yeah, no, I agree." And then he showed me, and she's like, "She won't show you this stuff, but she's got music that I think would fit really well." And he showed me a couple of her tunes, and I was like, "Jesus, like, why isn't she bringing this stuff to the table?" Right. So then I talked to her about it, and she's like, "Do you think that these songs will work?" I think not only would they work, I think this is kind of like where we can start to diverge. And if you're curious at all what those songs are,
Yep.
Limbo. Limbo was written before. That was Sarah, and Limbo, and then The Final Hour, where those two songs were Sarah bringing her take on, and in there we were kind of like, I think this could be like kind of the direction we take it in. And then Dear Savior was like the big other one that she brought on board, but that one was very collaborative. That was more of like she kind of came with like a piano skeleton and her vocal melodies and whatnot, and then I helped her convert that into a metal song. So that was like Dear Savior was like one of our favorite tracks off the album, because that one was just this big grandois epic song that her and I both kind of molded together. So that was really great.
Yeah, it's definitely the epic of the album. It just sounds kind of huge compared to everything else.
Yeah, almost didn't make it on the album. Funny story.
Oh, did you struggle making the song, putting it all together?
That one, if there was once again, this album didn't have really any conflict whatsoever attached to it. We were actually very very, very on the same page about where everything had to go, and that was the only song that I feel like there was any kind of trouble, because there was just, we had to send it back and forth and be like, what's going to go here? What's going to go here? And then there was some miscommunication and be like, what's that doing there? And she's like, oh, I don't know. I thought that was supposed to go there. But it was really just one of those okay, it was just confusing more than anything. It wasn't so much like trouble, but making Darkest Days came out really well. We have kind of like a mentality of writing where we kind of just stay out of each other's way. And we know that we're going to do the best we can on our own because we're all 100% invested in it. So if this is a kind of project where if I write a song and I finalize, the drums with my drummer and whatnot, and we send it off to Sarah, there isn't this, Sarah doesn't have this mentality of okay, well, what am I going to nitpick and change about this? She says, this is the song they wrote. What am I going to sing over this? And then when she returns her vocals, we don't look at it as what are we going to nitpick about this? We just say wow, she sounds great. I like what she did with this. We have a very, I think that's the key. I think that's why we don't, we've infamously had 2 albums without a single conflict, is because we just trust each other to write the best that we possibly can. And, it may not turn out exactly the way we originally envisioned it, but that's not a bad thing. So as a matter of fact, it's usually a good thing. So, I don't know how much more I could say on that question, but, other than it wasn't really a difficult album to make as much as it's, aside from the regular stresses like finances and, scheduling conflicts and stuff like that, that's all just kind of part of it though.
Right, well, let's get into comments that some YouTubers, my girlfriends and people have said. So a YouTuber question, what do you think of bands who use over-sexualization to promote themselves?
I don't really care. I do think that there is a line to be drawn. I can't remember what the one band is, but it's borderline on porn. And I think to some degree, I think it's easy to kind of hone in on women on that question because it's so obvious, because women objectively are very much more sexualized than men. But at the end of the day, guys are, successful bands, even freaking glam metal. There's no more sexualized form of music than glam metal in the 80s with bands like Motley Crue and, Guns N' Roses and stuff So I think it's just always, one of those things where I think it's always been a part of the music culture. And I think it's entirely up to the band to decide what they're comfortable doing. And I think, none of us have ever once told Sarah what she should wear or anything like that. Sarah's her own freaking girl. And we would deserve a swift kick in the nuts if we ever even stumble on it. So I guess the only way I can answer this question is that I guess we don't agree with it to a point where we would never ever use that as a tool, because Sarah's a person, Sarah's a singer, she is our friend, and she is a human being, and she is not a tool to promote this band. Um, and yeah, no, she is kind of the face of it, but we are. That doesn't give us the right to step in and say, okay, like, you know, like, let's sexualize the crap out of this. And, you know, and if she's gonna wear whatever she wants to wear, like, you know, in our Limbo music video, she just wore what she wanted to wear, and she looked great, and she killed it. And we were really proud of how she just kind of owned her own identity. And yeah, in general, though, it's none of my business what other bands do, though. I do think that there is a tad bit of I can see like a lot of resentment of other bands who maybe don't have like female lead singers, for example, and then you see a band with a female lead singer who's really overly sexualized themselves, and they can attribute a lot of their success to that. That can be frustrating for bands, because, you know, you say, oh, well, you're not making it on your music, you're making it on the look. But I don't know, I'm kind of a pragmatist in the sense that your look is kind of a part of it. It's a full package. It's not just your music. There's plenty of bands out there that look great but have shitty music. And there's a lot of bands out there that have great music but they look like shit. and I think it's just a whole package deal, and you kind of just got to put your stats where they count. And yeah, so I don't really have like a really strong opinion on that either way. I think people are going to do what they want to do, and as long as they're not being forced to do it, I'm okay with it. Leave it at the choice of their hands. Yeah.
Right. Platforms like Spotify and YouTube, you can listen to whole albums without really paying for it. And then there's things like legal downloads where you can get an album and not have to pay anything towards the band. What do you think of all of this? Do you think all of it's fine, or some of it, or do you just not agree with any of it?
Just gonna open that answer with ignorance. Like I'm not an expert on how the monetization of that stuff works yet. I'm learning very slowly, but all I can say is that there's a point at which where everything it really does help put you out there. You know, YouTube in particularly was like a big thing for us for the first album. And Spotify is turning out to be quite a useful tool for us for this album. But I don't know. Like I can say that there is a disparity in the money that artists are getting back. That really sucks. Like, you know, there's no secret to that. You pretty much got to be the biggest platinum selling artist out there in order to see any return of substantial proportions. And so we're just kind of, I don't know. I think the industry's kind of tapped into this. You know, they've tapped into that that band mentality of not knowing necessarily what to do with their music and just kind of resorting to the only options that are available. And yeah, the digital platform has definitely monopolized a lot of the means of listening. That being said, physical album sales are still my primary source of income from these albums. And so there's something to be said that people still want physical albums. They want to hold something in their hands. You know, they want like a representation of it. So.
Well, with that, how do I get your digital albums? Where do I go for them?
Yeah, iTunes, Spotify, like I said, all those platforms. I mean, we are monetized under them, so that's good. But yeah, like digital albums, like iTunes is pretty much like the standard to go to, and then physicals, we have to restock our warehouse in the States, and that can be tedious sometimes, but we're working on that too. Yeah, you go there, you can go through CD Baby, you can go through Amazon Music. There's a lot of platforms. There was a lot of platforms, and I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, but those are like the big few there.
Yeah, pretty much anywhere you can get your digital album, I believe. So, what about physical albums? How do I get them?
Well, like I said, we are distributing them through CD Baby and they're originated in the States. We are also, we're trying to mitigate this, but we are also directing people directly to us if they want to arrange like some sort of make an arrangement for us to mail an album out to them, because we're kind of like our own distributors as well. So if people want to contact us through our Facebook page, or our Facebook page is probably like the best way to contact us, and we'd be more than happy to get in touch with people to distribute those things.
All right, so finally, would you like to add anything or say anything to the fans while you have the chance?
Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Like, it was just this has been like this whole thing just kind of started randomly, and just started with one dude trying to help another dude kind of just make some music, and it's kind of exploded into this fun adventure that we've gone on and met so many people from across the globe, like yourself included. We just want to say that we are so grateful that there are people out there that think that we have something to say. We never expected anything from the world, and it's giving us everything we could have ever possibly asked for. So we're just eternally grateful for that. And yeah, we hope to be able to get to a point where we can break that ceiling of the Ontario scene, and we're hoping one day we can visit the world and meet these people and shake their hands, and if they come up to us, that we can like shake their hands and look them in the eye and say thank you for like helping us light this fire. So yeah, I think that's all we can say, and I think I can speak on behalf of Nick, Mark, and Sarah as well when I say that.
Right, well, hopefully Solaris keeps going, and hopefully you can start going worldwide, because I'd love it for you to go to the UK.
Oh yeah, well, hey man, I've been to the UK. It's a tremendous place, and I'd love to go there. It's just, yeah, that's been the biggest pain that we've had to suffer, is the amount of people that have been reaching out to us, like, when are you coming here? I mean, it's nice. You see people from abroad saying like, oh, it'd be nice if you came here. It's nice if you came here. It's like, yeah, it would be, but we gotta bide our time, and we're hoping that maybe the future holds in store for us a opportunity to tour with an established band as an opening act. That's what we think our best bet would be. And yeah, we're hoping one day to be able to push overseas. That would be beyond any of our wildest dreams if we were able to do that. Yeah, but luckily for us, I think that we're. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, just I was going to say, so everyone who's listening to this, if you want Solaris to actually come to your place, you need to support the band and go out and buy their physical albums and digital. If you don't do that, they're not going to come to you. So get off your ass and go do it. Just do that for
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So that's pretty much the end of the interview. So thanks for giving me your time to do this. It's gone on for a fair while, so I'm sorry about that. But it's been good.
No, not at all. I enjoy chatting with people about this stuff, and I'm more than happy to kind of just clarify points of confusion and share the journey too. This is a very passionate project of mine, and you're catching me on the early years where the fire is still very, very burning passionately, and so like I want to take advantage of that and really talk to as many people about it as possible. And I'm again very flattered that you took the time to review our albums, and just as a side point, just to say that you did it so honestly, and I can't stress that enough. Keep doing that. We and even Sarah was talking to me about those videos, and she just said, no, like, his feedback is really good. You have like a very good ear for reviewing albums, and we're hoping to and that's why I was more than happy to promote you on when we were like kind of giving out ratings of our album and stuff. I want to kind of bring attention, because I think you've got a really good ear for listening to music, and I think that you bring up a lot of valid points, and I've certainly enjoyed listening to them. So
well, thanks for that, and on behalf of myself and everyone who's probably listening, thanks for doing this really in-depth interview. I'm sure everyone will appreciate it.
I hope so. Yeah. But yeah, thanks for having me, I appreciate it.
Yep. So thanks, and that'll be the end of this recording. So until the next video, I'll see everyone later. Bye, guys.